Okay. Hello, everyone. A quick announcement. I'm going to write it here. I'm going to be moving to Rumble, the other platform. The last 5 YouTube videos I've recorded have all been cut down for some reason. I contacted support, but nothing happened. But anyways, I wanted to at least, give one talk today, and I haven't set up Rumble yet. Okay. So, all right. The title of this episode is If You Only Knew. And I decided, perhaps due to emotional reasons and emotional reasoning, to give a casual commentary on my perception and to analyze for myself what I should do next with these talks and this project. So, if you only knew. So, since 2014, so here, MW's evolution in regards to this project. So, I would say in 2012 to 2013, So this is something people don't know. I mean, many people who listen to the talks maybe know, but what it is in 2012 to 13, I have a dream. I wake up in the morning in a sort of sleep paralysis on my bed. I hear this word for the first time. I say the word. The moment I say the word in the dream, the word is called Lida. I know its exact spelling in the dream. It's like an instantaneous knowing in the dream state. And so the moment I say this word, I get a sort of, some people in the New Age community call it astral projection, but I get some sort of projection beyond the ceiling, right? And in a very short amount of time, maybe in a few seconds, I find myself suddenly lifting above my ceiling, getting a vision, and then coming back from the ceiling into where my body was in the bed. So what was the vision, right? I see a giant stone wall in space, in outer space, and there is an inverted triangular cave. In the dream, in that moment, I feel a restriction. I feel a restriction in going into the cave. And I also see a green, I don't want to say like a green alien, but a type of green being that kind of looks like tree vines. I don't know how to say it, right? I also see a green being, let's say alien being, that is sitting on a chair, and it has its hands where its wrists are, like a metal bar on the chair, holding it on the chair. And its hands are locked into the chair, something like that. I see this dream, and after the moment I wake up, I feel my soul has taken a shower. Okay? So this was a very notable event. Now, after this, I start what some people call channeling, but I start practicing automatic speech. This is on mute, is it? Oh, okay. Okay. So, this is what viewers may not know, and I don't know why I have postponed this, but in 2000, So I practice automatic speech. This leads me to speaking out around 10 books. The names of the book I'll try to write it down here, so in case people remember if in the future they come out. Okay, so the first thing I wrote was called The Great Work. Then I wrote something called The Celestial Walk. Then there was other, oh yeah, Cationic Imprints. And then there was one more. Oh yeah, Contortions of Affordable Grace. Then I wrote The Inventor's Sphere. Yeah. And then I wrote The Ancient Listeners. Then I wrote a book called Vision Extraction. And there was one more. Oh yeah, Hidden Engineer. Hidden Engineer, I think. These books, there's more. I wrote also The Gift of Fibonacci. And there was one more I can't remember. There was one more I wrote. They came in twos. The Gift of Fibonacci and sorry guys, this was on mute. I don't know for how long it was on mute, but pretty much I write these 10 books, okay? The books would come in twos. And anyways, I get to 2014. In 2014, I get a vision of the name Mr. Within and Mr. Within's gift, and I hear alongside that vision this sentence, 10,000 talks for the betterment of mankind. I begin to go to this park bench. It's not really a park, it's this accommodation area. And I would have my iPhone 3 and iPhone and fake Apple headphones, and I think the headphones were like 10 pounds or something. And I was in the UK, by the way. This was in Canada. This all happened in the UK. I would just press the red record button. I have pressed that button way more than thousands of times. I think like above 1,500 times. I would just press the red record button, and the knowing of what to say was there. So, and I don't know if people don't know this, I record so many talks from 2014 to 16, and something unfortunate happens, and they get I don't know how to tell you. It's like I lose 300 of the talks once, and then at some point somebody throws my hard drive at a wall. I lose another couple hundred. Then I had two phones. These two phones, which had a lot of recordings that I didn't know how to I didn't upload. The phones get their memory becomes so full that I can't turn the phone. So the phones are there. So people might not realize this, but there has been a lot of my talks that I think they have either been devoured by the void, or they're locked somewhere, and maybe after this lifetime somebody could go find them and do something. I don't know. And alongside all the stuff I was writing in 2013, 12 to 13, I've had to endure it. I had to, anything you do, I think for a while, if at some point you get a heartbreak. So this was from 2014 going to 16. But very interesting experiences happen during these years. I am zealously following my intuition. The way I'm saying, guys, so I've written here, during these years I am zealously following my intuition. My intuition, like Socrates' inner oracle, would authorize and unauthorize my movements, to the degree that when I was with people, to the degree that it saved my life, and also would tell me to leave places when there was no reason to. But later on, it would be a blessing. It would be a blessing. You don't know. It was a very strange life. You know, my father, you know, when you're born in Iran, you have to go to military. Okay, many countries are like this. I dodged that, and what I found to become my military experience was, in some sense, in the domain of communication. So I recorded many talks, and the way the talks would, I would also walk and talk. It was a very fascinating time. But whether knowingly or unknowingly, I pushed myself into a type of isolation. That means at the beginning of 2014, I was so open, so social, so many places getting invited. And then when the talks began, slowly I began noticing myself pulled away from my outer life. And it was as if I became a being that was actually living invisibly. A being doing an invisible work. So, a ridiculous amount of, and I thought, you know, what is this? Is this the true renunciation that follows the mystical intent, whether you like it or not? But I just found myself having a different sort of desire during these years. A desire to do what I felt I must do. And it surpassed reason, because I had, when I look back at all this effort I've given, sometimes I get a bit, I don't want to say I get scared, but I think about like what was wrong with me, or what was up with me that I endured. That means it was as if I don't know what force or ability allowed me, or made my own desires, human desires, become lessened when it came to giving the talks. But it was a very anyways, it was a sort of intuitive following. Now, during this phase, something very unique happens. I believe it happened in 2015. And so my twin brother was there. He would come and see me. And one day he came, and it was in the evening, and granted, we were smoking and whatnot. Whether he didn't realize it, but suddenly through him, something spoke to me, and it said to me, literally, my brother turned around to me with a different tone and a different voice. You know, not a different voice, but with a different movement of sentences. He looked at me and he said, "The simulation is over." Which at the time I didn't understand what it meant. But what it meant was that the zealous intuition follow-up had, in some sense, that intelligence of mine following the synchronicities. I had come to this understanding that all my synchronicities were me, because I am not a part of my moment, I am my whole moment. So I think because of this realization, there was a sort of interdimensional communication that the sort of simulation I was living in was complete. So all the talks continue throughout these. You don't know how many balconies I've spoken on, how many different parts of this planet. I've literally just went there and I've been somebody in the background giving talks. You know, there was once I was giving a talk in this park in this was in Canada. I was giving this talk, and I remember this lady was passing by. It was in the park area and I was in the bench, and she for a second smiled, you know, and then she left, right? And for a moment, you know, all of these were like emotions and signs that I was doing the right thing. But still, we are human. Throughout this whole time, you know, very interesting experiences are happening. I am missing out on my humanization, but what I'm doing is energizing me, empowering me. Throughout this whole time, I also develop a smoking habit or addiction, and I start smoking lots of cigarettes. In 2016, I go to an ashram in India. I live there for 2 months, live a complete renunciate life, and even before going to India, I was quoting and giving talks about, you know, the likes of Swami Krishnananda, Swami Shivananda, Swami Vishnunanda, different people. And Papaji and whatnot. Sorry, not Papaji, Guru Prabhupada and all of this. And sorry, not Guru Prabhupada, Shri Prabhupada. And anyways, when I go there, there is right beside the ashram I was in, this random ashram I'd selected called Niketan Ashram. Right beside it was the Divine Life Society. Okay. And I remember going in there and all the quotes of all those people feeling like, yo, I attracted this because I talked about these people. Anyways, the reason I'm sharing this is pretty much I go there in this ashram, and there's a man who people were calling Guruji, Uncle Ji, or a Guruji for some reason. And so this guy, I get a feeling to ask him a question, and then afterwards, you know, it was like the ashram's yoga class, free yoga class. And so what happens is after everybody leaves, I go up to this guy and I tell him, hey man, I've had this huge burst of like language and writing all this stuff, and what does this mean? And the guy looks at me and he says sanskara. I ask him, what does that mean? He says, these are the impressions. These are the cultivations of moments prior to this life, and they are in some sense taking fruit in this life. After 2016, I remember I go to Iran, and my cousins there are very well off, and I was there as this sort of renunciate, kind of this guy who had literally my material desires had reduced to a point where I felt the moment So from 2016 to 2000, what is it now? Let's give it, I mean, what do you mean? Okay, let's 2023, okay? Some unique, I continued on living a very minimalistic life. After giving these talks, I found my own reality, my own preference for reality. I found my own preference for reality to be different than others, due to feeling like a different person. A part of me renounced others. This had its advantages and disadvantages. Giving these talks began rendering me more of a mental entity, let's say, than a physical one. As if the desires that extended from the inner realms were also satisfied by the inner realms. And this wasn't good, because it meant that I went into this phase where I stopped understanding my physical desires. And it's a bit kind of like, imagine you went into a time machine and then you step out of the time machine and suddenly realize what you were again. Do you know? But during these times, some interesting stuff happened. Some very interesting ideas were found by me, or designed by me. One was the idea of Civilization 2.0. This was a vision and has become one of the most important aspects of this project. And the vision was this: Civ 2.0 is Mr.Within strategy to bypass extinction on this planet, to bypass planetary extinction on this planet indefinitely. And it has 3 phases. So I've given talks on this. You can go look them up. But this was a very huge thing. The other thing was, I realized the error communication. And I also noticed that many beings and many people are actually being pulled towards communicating, okay, in cyberspace. I would say it was after 2020, where, maybe even earlier, but definitely after 2020, where I began experiencing more of the future, okay, in my inner realms. So I would look at things, and in my mind would fast forward like a film, how that geometry of what I'm looking at would be present in the future. So new books come into the picture. I also write a bunch of other technical books. One that's very profound that I worked on is The Source of Language. But the books after that, after I started the talks, the books I started writing were not finished. They were like inspiration oriented, so the inspiration came to write a little bit of them, and then my attention went elsewhere. So I started writing for the first time, and this was inspired out of my twin brother. My twin brother is, if people ask me, I would say he's the greatest novelist on the planet, one of the greatest writers. He's the one who inspired me to write science fiction. And actually, I wrote a science fiction book. You know, the first one I wrote is dedicated to him. Do you know? So the title was The Messenger of Giants. This was a sci-fi book. Then I'm working on one now where I'll just give the acronyms. And these are futuristic short stories. Right now I've prioritized on this one, the TLOAC. Of course, I also forgot, throughout this whole thing, I got a vision of the School of Athens 2.0. An advanced research institute that researches the most advanced, and also a network of advanced communicators all around the world, where the greatest conversations on the planet are happening. This was due to a vision This was a vision I saw, okay? I'll be honest guys, I had an expectation that in a few years this channel, when I started it, it would in some sense pop, and there would be enough funds for me to initiate these. So the vision I had of School of Athens 2.0, I saw a vision of something that is bigger than the Colosseum in Rome, couple sizes bigger, and at the center of it, designed with the marble style of the School of Athens fresco in the Vatican, drawn by Raphael. Just a second. So again, I'll say it again. Pretty much, I got a vision of this Colosseum, again, couple sizes bigger than the one in Rome. At the center of it, like the House of Commons, there were chairs, and the whole style of it was in the marble style of the fresco drawn in the Vatican. Okay? And so I saw myself as the Speaker of the House, and I saw that instead of it being political parties, it's all the philosophical denominations, all ideological systems on the planet. The School of Athens, as drawn again in the painting on the Vatican, what it was the idea that the greatest philosophers all around the world gathered to discuss the greatest ideas on the planet, in the sense that the most valuable thing was in some sense vision. Can you imagine, like, this is of course considered to not have been real, but can you imagine, like, back in the day there was no music, there was no internet, there was no access to information. Most people couldn't read. At most you could understand what other people were saying. So imagine two great philosophers, for example Diogenes challenging Plato, right? And these guys battling it out in conversation rather than with swords and shields, and then everybody in the town gathering around, because every sentence they would say would be in some sense opening a new picture to the world that hadn't been there. This is the value of oration. Okay, long before people could write and read, people were through word of mouth passing down stories, to the point that the divine reality had to ensure an exceptional memory for these human beings. That means it was as if, imagine there was a time that all human beings had photographic memory. Why? Because consciousness had not been distracted by other dimensions yet. I also got a vision during this time. So the School of Athens was this advanced network of advanced communicators. And I also envisioned it as a sort of leading to like headquarters of the advanced beings. I would say that this project that I embarked upon, throughout it I began realizing that a part of me is so bored with existence that it is waiting to see the great performance of it. I envisioned here two archetypes also throughout these years. The advanced communicator, pretty much I've written about this in other places, in other works of mine, but pretty much I started to see all beings on this planet as advanced communicators, as pilots of consciousness. And there was also another term I created. There was the sadhu in Vedic thought, so I created the Sado. Okay? And so this was the idea that there are some beings born as passengers in this world. If you treat the whole world as a plane of existence, there are some who are born as advanced communicators. So if the world was a plane of existence, and by plane I'm punnily pointing to an airplane. So the Sadhu were the passengers, the advanced communicators were the cabin crew of the world, and the pilots were the cabin crew, and the pilots of consciousness were the pilots. So I saw what is moving here in this world. So this brought me into this point where, here I'll say this part rather than write it. And when I look at human beings, you know, I shifted from this perspective that we are physical creatures in a physical world, and I began to see, since the era of advanced communication has begun, what it is that the advanced communicator is the most advanced communication of the universal sector. Human beings are not human beings, they are beings that a part of them appears human. I forgot to mention here something else. I also saw, rather than creating those archetypes, there also was the vision of the museum of language. A museum where the greatest sentences in history, you know, are there. The most profound works of literature. And I don't know why I felt maybe this is happening in another parallel life or whatnot, or maybe maybe the divine has deemed that I'm unworthy of it, even though I found the idea. I also saw something here. There will be a library of names, and this would be how in the future there was going to be this next level library, the biggest library in the world. And this library, people are going to go and see underneath every person's name, right? Underneath every person's name, all the works they have done in this lifetime, preserved through cyberspace and also written. Now, 2023 to the future. Now, this is where I've come in regards to this, where I'm like, and throughout this whole time, oh, I gotta mention this. Throughout this whole time, I had an expectation of massive YouTube growth, which did not happen. I honestly, for a moment, closed my eyes. This was a while ago. And I tried to fathom why. Why YouTube channels that have cat videos on them, you know, have millions, like ridiculous amounts of views. But when somebody comes to talk about the world, why is it? And then I thought about something, right? I thought about my own karma as a kid. And I realized that it could, the main reason of it could be that it wasn't cool. Because I thought if 200 people, for example, had cared for these talks, and if each one had shared the videos, you know, it would have led to an automatic sort of growth. But I realized that people are hearing this Hold on, guys. I gotta answer the phone. Never mind. And so I realized, I thought like if people would share it, then it would expand. But I realized perhaps the talks are coming across in the way. Oh my God. And so I realized that it's in some sense maybe a detached affinity. That people, they like it themselves, but they don't feel they should share. Something is whether my speech or my accent or something isn't worthy enough for people to share this with others. Okay. Or I thought that could be one option. The other thought, I thought maybe I don't deserve it. And then it made me go into this sort of self-divine questioning. It made me feel as if what sort of force would move a being in a certain direction just so nothing happens. Like, it was a bit terrifying for me. Why? Because for my mind, it had never gone to that point, but for a second my mind went to think that, wait a minute, what am I doing if the world is evil? If this place is evil, then it's like they say, when in Rome, be Roman. And I went into this questioning of, it was as if my mind, I may not come across it in these talks, but I'm a person who, from just my nature, I've dealt with my anger in my inner realms. Majority of time, when I feel something's wrong in the outer realms, I pinpoint why it's wrong. I notice it's in the inner realms, and I keep it there in the inner realms, as if, like, imagine commanding your anger not to step out into the outer realms. And anger and intensity are different things. Anger comes from a feeling that you were broken and you need to break. So anyways, it pushed me into this questioning, right? It pushed me into this situation where I was like, man, should I have put away all of this and went after a sort of hedonist life that I missed out on? You see, that's where I'm left, where I'm wondering, was this the right choice? And this weird feeling I've had, that I would leave here soon, like that feeling. So, after various viewpoints, some which I know I went through, which I can't mention now or remember to mention now. But I remember the result I saw in the outer realms. It led to a point where I'm like, okay, wrong, maybe I'm doing the wrong chess move. Maybe I should be existing somewhere else as something else. As someone else. And so I accepted. I accepted that, okay, let's be a fool and continue. But what do you do when the result of your effort has reached a point where you are feeling miserable? I reached a point of self-contradiction. This is I'm coming up to now, okay? And this is the contradiction this is the crossroad I've come to, and I feel a bit heartbroken and I don't know which one to decide. I have come to this view that there are two ways to function here, okay? One way is to preserve an unsealed heart, which means that the human being listens to their decency resonance, and you are trying to preserve an emotionally righteous life, and therefore in the outer realms you are like excuse me, but you're like naked in a battlefield. There's one approach, one way to live this, and anybody who says yo balance both doesn't understand the situation, because you have to choose a direction to advance in. You cannot you can't walk on two crossroads at the same time. If you were, you're not human. And guys, listen to these live streams, by the way. I would even encourage viewers to record these. If anybody can somehow outside, like, you know, use their phone to record this talk, right? I can't record it because my laptop doesn't have enough memory, right? But there's a chance that when this talk, after I finish the live stream, it's going to be cut down to like half of it, right? So what is the crossroad? The crossroad, and by the way, throughout these times, the intensity of the energy that has been around me, this is the crossroad I've come to. One option: preserve the unsealed heart and have faith in an invisible outcome regardless of physical inefficiency. The second, so I would say one crossroad is the unsealed heart. That means it's another way of saying, oh my god, let me get rid of the number. Okay, so one option, preserve the unsealed heart and have faith in an invisible outcome regardless of meaningless physical inefficiency. In other words, to preserve the decency of one's nature, or to preserve one's nature. What does that mean? Is one approach is you can live through this life and not change your nature. Okay, it's a feeling you hold on to. Okay, it's that feeling when suddenly you feel, whether analytically or not, you get a feeling, I should do this or I shouldn't do this. It's that feeling. If you listen to that feeling, you preserve your nature. That means how life is changing doesn't change in some sense how you're being a being. Okay, this is also I would say the spiritual crossroad. Okay, it means that I treat myself not from here and live in accordance to that. To preserve the nature without letting, let's say without letting ego transmute your nature. The second option, which unfortunately I am being more and more as the days go by being pulled towards this. You know, the Buddha, the archetype of the Buddha, is trying to take the Buddhas, or let me say it, there's two types of bodhisattvas. There are ones that are trying to take individuals to a higher dimension, and then there are those who are trying to bring a higher dimension to the individuals. Imagine a being that was so enraged, so in such a rage that it is taking too long. Imagine, you know, like the people have fallen into an ocean and there's some people, you know, like scuba divers or something, people who know how to swim, like lifeguards, you know, jumping from the boat and trying to save those people who are in a meaningless ocean drowning. And then there are some, imagine there was a being so mighty that he decided to lift the ocean. He decided to convert the ocean into land. So those who were sinking were no longer sinking. Do you see the difference? One is trying to go up the mountain, the other is bringing the summit of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. There are transcendental agencies, ancient ones, prior to even the personality's arrival in the land of the mind. There was a time where I thought, I don't know why my mind fathomed this, but I came to this impression that this planet was in some sense a sort of open ground, and various extraterrestrial agendas prior, at the beginning, before even the caveman was a caveman, they in some sense came here. And what is going on is, in some sense, this might sound bizarre, I've never spoken about it this openly, because it's not something to really, treat what I'm saying playfully, okay? I'm just 1 in 8 billion shouting in the void. I came on under this impression that there is another reality where beings are manifest in. Those beings know that we can't see them. Those beings are in some sense conducted. Think of it this way: why should there be creatures in the void at all? It makes no sense. Creaturehood is a design. What I'm trying to say is, imagine there's this empty rock, and imagine there are various, okay, what I'm trying to say is different extraterrestrial groups. To the modern mind, it would be soul groups, came on this planet early on, and they all are fighting for territory. Until more advanced beings appeared in this realm and began telling them that in some sense the territory fighting over resources is meaningless to beings that are actually fields. So think of it this way: what is the most genius approach of a creature in a void if it doesn't want to suffer in the endless infinite renditions of the void? It is to become the world. The most ancient beings that are governing as fields of activity over this plane of existence, they were once creatures. But they have been creatures so long that it does not even make sense for them to be a creature anymore. Right now, we are experiencing one biological body in a world. You have been given like kindergarten level responsibility. Just attend. But, or let's say it's grade 1. We're all in grade 1. Okay? Our unknown forces have dropped us in this strange and like I don't know how many spiritual people on this planet think this world is a school. The school is not the most advanced idea of humanity. It is, however, an advanced collective idea, but it's not the most advanced. Whoever who sees this world as a school, you remain as an infinite student. There are no students and teachers here. It's unknown beings learning to be responsible for reality. You know, I was playing pool once with my father, billiard, and I said something that made him laugh. Like, and it was unintentional, but it was, what I was saying was that everything that society has been telling me when I was young of how to behave here as a world, as a being, was freaking garbage. My conditioning was garbage. And you know, let me tell you what I mean by that. I mean that it took me a while to realize nobody knows. That's a type of enlightenment. Nobody knows. Everybody is acting, and they have to limit. They have to forget they're an actor to not suffer the unknown. That's the conditioning. They have closed your eyes to how unknown this place really is. And it's not them. Do you see? That's why conditioning is such a magnificent deceptive strategy. Sun Tzu in The Art of War. Let me finish, guys, what I was saying about the second crossroad. The second crossroad. So, anyways, to come back to this. In 2023, I feel one crossroad is I renounce my physical life and just maintain till the rest of this lifetime, just abide by the unchanging presence, which is another way of saying you are a program and you decide to become an invincible program. An invincible program at some point will feel so superior that its superiority will feel inferior. That means, for how long can you be a god of your own moment? For how long? But that is the strategy to preserve the other life. That means think of it, a being is living a physical life, a mental life, and poetically spiritual life. Okay, so in order to maintain the spiritual life, the first crossroad, you have to actually renounce. I shouldn't say you have to renounce, but if you take your body and mind seriously, then you miss out on the spiritual life. But the savageness of survival has kept us as it's the necessity of the biological and physical life, right? To the point where I was saying, like, I was inspired to give a talk, my spirituality is no longer spirituality. It comes into a round circle and you realize everything you thought wasn't spiritual is spiritual. But a choice has to be made because the human is still here. As if you as a being were enlightened long ago. But what about your body? What does it do? What does it do here? And so the other path, the second option, is adaptation. It would be this mentality where, imagine you're this creature in a world filled with other savage creatures. And so you have renounced savageness. And imagine you suddenly see other creatures are biting. And yet you tell yourself, I'm a good person. I should maintain. I should not fight back. I should not resist. I should not bite that which has bitten me. And you stand there, being bit by the outer realms and being in your inner realms detached, watching the physical life fail. Yet you win in the divine life. You win in the other world if you don't fight here. Just like, that, what was that anime called? There was this anime, I think it was called Vinland Saga. Okay, it had a very huge principle. In it, there was a character named Thor, the most mightiest warrior. This warrior had gone in savageness, was undefeated, had next level power, but then he realizes to be a true warrior is to fight without the sword, is to not kill, not destroy. And that's the first option. To in some sense preserve the consideration of the higher nature and not go in the battlefield. The other option, the second option is to allow your nature to change. Let me write it here. The second option is to not listen to the heart. the righteousness of listening and abiding by that decency and resonance within one. Pretty much the crossroad is the preservance of the spiritual life, or to in some sense the general. Think of it, the soul is the general, the mind is the commanding officer, and the body is the soldier. Now imagine there's the soul of this moment has to decide. The attention in the moment has to decide. It has to decide if it wants to watch in the same way that Christ said, to be in the world and not of it. When you're not of this world, it's very easy to renounce this world. That means, do we maintain that dehumanized knowing? The second option is the general decides to go back down into the battlefield where the commanding officers are and the soldiers are, and it is in some sense bestows the oversight to another being. There is this esoteric idea that souls appear through soul groups, and one of the beings acts as an oversoul. For example, in Sufism, this was seen as the Khalifa, right? The Khalifa. Khalifa, I don't know, one of these. And so the idea was that this being actually has very reduced karma compared to all the other beings in the soul group, simply because it has more mightier inner karma. That means it has to watch over. The second option is to enter the fight of the lower world. I'm trying to phrase this. The crossroad I feel I've come to as a being is pretty much the option of keep changing myself in the inner realms and passively living the lifetime in the outer realms. Or renounce the spiritual expectations on life and to descend into the bewildered and savage field. Because let me tell you this, when your mind gives you visions, shows you the future. I'm someone, you ask me, I will say I've seen the future in my mind. Many times. So many probabilities to it, it's ridiculous. But in this episode, I am attempting to see my own future. And I have walked a path without fruition. You planted a seed and the tree hasn't grown. How long should you stand watching this tree? In the second option, you realize people don't care for truth. People don't want the truth. People want to feel they're participating before they die. That's it. Because the truth may not be human. And this is the conflict. It's not to be or not to be. It's to be human or not to be.
No quiero matarnos.
Bunch of actors in an unknown world. That's all it is. You know, the option is not if people are enlightened or not, but to remain enlightened or not. You know, I thought about it also from another way, and I thought, okay, maybe there is an allotted karma. Maybe the allotted karma is, in some sense, a certain amount of the lifetime you will be an unpleasant being, and a certain amount of the lifetime you will be a pleasant being. It's as if, like, when you meet a person, if they show you all the things that are good about them, you're left to just seeing the bad. But if you show the bad stuff first, then they in some sense are left seeing the good. And so I was like, wait a minute, life, is this game that you're playing, where a being walks towards clarity, but there was also steps of walking towards unclarity. I don't know if this project failed, but it damn feels like it. So, the choice of what kind of being to be while we're being. What will happen? This episode, it might be just, I'm giving it for myself to figure some things out. So what are my options? To continue this path, have faith in an invisible victory, and endure the inefficiency, or to descend in the level of ego and actually begin fighting this world. There have been many people in history who they have expressed an intense force upon the species. I would consider myself that I have expressed an intense mental force. Since an unmet expectation leads to a rage of self, a rage directed at self. In a moment of failure, one approach feels to destroy myself. the urge to leave the inefficient room. You see, I'm pretty much saying there's one option where my nature changes and I have to renounce the spiritual activity. The other option is to remain as the spiritual activity and yet watch that. It's like watching the inner realms fail or the outer realms fail. It's like which one to choose. Dylan Thomas said, rage against the dying of the light. What do you do when it's your own light? What can you rage against? This world doesn't care for truth. Or it would have been it. I think, honestly, because of my because of my outer realm result, my inner realms feel unworthy, and because I feel unworthy, the guard I've held up against this world's influence is descending. The emotions that I am finding myself having are ones where I'm starting to dislike this place. I think the time has come. I feel in the next coming years I am becoming an unpleasant being. Because I cannot forgive myself for this mistake. Not a mistake to others. I don't feel that the talks are mistaken in that regard. I feel I have made a mistake. I have done something wrong to Amin Jaber Ansari. Because I can't forgive the self that I have lost. This is why I feel lost. To renounce being a self, or to be a self that fights for a new being. By the way, guys, the next live stream would probably be on Rumble. I don't know how to set it up, but I think I created the account Mr.Within, so if that should be there. I honestly contacted YouTube support, like they're helping, but I think the talks are lost. Like when I say the talks are lost, I mean the five I recorded. These talks of mine, I think their value surpasses my understanding of them. That's why I don't really have an opinion on that. My sorrow in this episode is directed to myself. I'm upset at the moment I have come to now. So, if I become in the next couple of years an unpleasant being, should I keep giving these talks? Well, logically, no. It's another way of saying if I have spoken about what I have considered to be the most beautiful and the most advanced, if those emotions are shifting, plus I have this feeling that cyberspace is becoming impure. So renounce cyberspace and live truly non-spiritually. Should one renounce what doesn't work or continue with blind faith? And if your blind faith is destroying you in the outer realms, what must one do then? I must either renounce myself or renounce the world. Because the body is in the world, if I renounce myself, the body will suffer. So I think that I have to stop being a being in my inner realms and to live in the outer realms as a watcher of limitation. happens when then you dislike the self